There is a sound that most of us will never notice until it stops. It is not loud. It is not dramatic. It does not announce itself with sirens or headlines. It is the sound of a chair creaking as your father sits down slowly, favoring his knees. It is the sound of your mother's voice on the phone, asking when you're coming home. Again, even though you visited only last month. It is the quiet hum of a kitchen where someone has been cooking your favorite meal for 30 years, without ever once being thanked for it properly. We spend our lives chasing thunder, applause, promotions, likes, milestones, the roar of a life that looks impressive from the outside. And all the while, right beside us, a quieter sound has been playing on repeat. The sound of two people who loved us before we could even say the word love, growing older, growing softer, growing smaller in the doorway when they wave goodbye. We don't hear it. Not really. Not until the day it stops. And that is the day most people finally understand what happiness actually was. Somewhere along the way, we were taught a lie. Not maliciously. No one sat us down and said it directly. But culturally, quietly, relentlessly, we absorb the idea that happiness is something you find out there, in a bigger house, in a better job title, in a relationship that finally feels right, in a passport full of stamps, in a version of ourselves that has arrived. Modern life is built like a treadmill disguised as a staircase. We are told, if you just get the next thing, you will finally feel whole. And so we run. We chase promotions we don't need to impress people we don't like. We measure our worth in metrics, followers, salaries, square footage, and we call this building a life, when often it is simply building distance. Distance from the people who shaped us. Distance from the home that once held all of who we are. Here is the paradox no one tells you. The pursuit of happiness often becomes the very thing that steals it from you. Because while you are out there chasing the next milestone, your parents are at home, quietly aging, quietly waiting, quietly needing nothing more than you, your time, your voice, your presence, and yet you keep postponing them. Not out of cruelty, out of distraction, out of the belief that there will always be more time. There won't. Psychologists have long understood something that most self-help culture conveniently ignores. Pleasure and meaning are not the same currency, and you cannot buy one with the other. Pleasure is the dopamine hit of a new purchase, a compliment, a vacation photo. It spikes, and it fades, and it always demands a bigger dose next time. But meaning is different. Meaning doesn't spike. It settles. It doesn't shout for your attention. It simply stays, quietly reinforcing your sense that your life has weight, that you matter to someone, that your existence is for something beyond yourself. Caring for an aging parent is one of the purest sources of meaning a human being can experience, not because it feels good in the moment, but because it feels right in the marrow. It aligns you with something larger than your own ambitions. It reminds you that you are not simply a consumer of experiences, but a link in a chain of love that stretches backward and forward through time. There is a kind of person who spends their life accumulating comfort, and there is a kind of person who spends their life accumulating meaning. And when both of them, decades later, look back on their lives, it is almost always the second person who feels at peace. Not because their life was easier, but because their life was rooted. Let's be honest, though. Let's not romanticize this into something it isn't. Caring for aging parents is hard, brutally, unglamorously hard. It is the exhaustion of lifting a body that once lifted you, of waking at 3 a.m. because of a cough down the hall, of learning the names of medications you never wanted to learn. It is watching someone who once seemed invincible, who once carried you on their shoulders, who once seemed to know the answer to everything, become uncertain, become fragile, become in some quiet way, like a child again. It is financial weight, medical bills that don't care about your savings account, time off work that costs you opportunities. It is emotional weight, The slow grief of watching a parent's mind or body change, of grieving someone who is still alive, of feeling guilty for being tired, and then feeling guilty for feeling guilty. It is the sacrifice of your own time, the birthday parties you leave early, the trips you don't take, the version of your 20s or 30s that gets quietly rewritten around someone else's needs. No one should pretend this is easy. No one should wrap it in a bow and call it simply beautiful. It is beautiful, and it is heavy. Both things are true at once. That is what makes it real. But here is what the people who have lived through it will tell you, if you ask them honestly. Beneath the exhaustion, there is a strange and steady peace that pleasure seekers rarely find. Viktor Frankl, a psychiatrist who survived unimaginable suffering, wrote that those who found meaning, even in the darkest circumstances, were the ones who endured, not just physically, but spiritually. He believed that meaning is not found in the absence of suffering, but often inside it. That the very act of carrying a burden for someone we love can transform the burden into purpose. This is the quiet secret of caregiving. It does not simply take from you. Somewhere in the exhaustion, it gives something back that no vacation, no bonus, no achievement ever could. The unshakable knowledge that your life mattered to someone in the most literal, physical, daily way possible. There is a story from ancient China that has survived for over 2,000 years, passed down as one of the most enduring examples of devotion between a child and a parent. Wen of Han, who would go on to become emperor, was known, long before he ever wore a crown, for something far quieter than political power. His mother fell seriously ill, and for 3 years, historical accounts say, he remained by her side, not from a distance, not through servants. He tended to her personally, and it is recorded that before giving her any medicine, he would taste it himself first, every single time, to be sure it was safe, to spare her even a moment of unnecessary suffering. 3 years of a future emperor kneeling beside his mother's bed, tasting bitter medicine meant for her lips, staying present through nights that offered him nothing except the ability to say, "I did not leave you." He was not required to do this. His position even then could have afforded him distance, servants, an easier path. He chose devotion instead, and it is not the throne he would later sit on that history remembers most tenderly. It is this, a son kneeling, tasting bitterness first, so his mother wouldn't have to face it alone. This story has outlived empires, not because it is dramatic, but because it captures something timeless about what it actually means to love someone. Not the poetry of love, but the practice of it. Love, in its truest form, is rarely grand gestures. It is tasting the bitter medicine first. It is showing up on the ordinary, unrecorded nights when no one is watching and nothing is asked of you except your presence. Picture your own parents for a moment, not as they were when you were small, not as the towering, capable figures who once seemed unbreakable, but as they are now, or as they will be someday. Sooner than you think. Picture the hands that once held yours before you could walk, now trembling slightly around a cup of tea. Picture the voice that once sang you to sleep, now a little quieter, a little slower, asking you to repeat yourself because their hearing isn't what it used to be. Picture the chair by the window where they sit sometimes, waiting. Not for anything specific, just waiting, the way people do when their days have grown long and their visitors have grown few. Ask yourself honestly, when was the last time you sat with them? Not on a passing phone call, not in the 15 distracted minutes between errands, but truly sat with nowhere else to be? When was the last time you asked about their fears, their regrets, their joys? The way you'd ask a stranger you were trying to understand for the first time. We assume there will be time. We always assume there will be time. And then, one day, there is a phone call. And the time is gone. And all that remains are the conversations we meant to have and never did. This is the part of the story that grief teaches too late, and love could teach in time. Your parents are not a permanent fixture of your life. They are not the background scenery against which your real life happens. They are part of the real life, possibly the realest part. Every ambitious dream you chase, every promotion, every relationship, every reinvention of yourself exists because two people, imperfect and human, decided decades ago to give you a chance at existing at all. Somewhere in the noise of building your own life, it becomes easy to forget that the people who built the foundation are still standing on it, waiting to see what you'll make of it. Not because they need credit, but because watching you live is, for many of them, the last great joy of their lives. Caring for them is not a debt to be paid, though many think of it that way. It is not transactional. It is not obligation dressed up as love. It is something closer to completion, the closing of a circle that began the moment they first held you and whispered whatever new parents whisper into the dark. I will take care of you. To care for them now is simply to whisper it back. There is a particular kind of happiness that does not come from achievement. It does not photograph well. It will never trend online. It looks like sitting beside a hospital bed at 2 a.m., holding a hand that once held yours. It looks like relearning your parents' favorite meal because their appetite has changed. It looks like patience on the 100th repeated question, tenderness on the hardest days, and grace on the days when you feel like you have nothing left to give. This happiness is quiet. It doesn't announce itself, but those who have touched it will tell you that it is more solid, more real, more permanent than anything money ever bought them, because pleasure fades the moment the experience ends. But meaning stays. It becomes part of who you are. It becomes quite literally the story you tell yourself about your own life when you're old enough to look back and ask if it mattered. And it will matter. Not because of what you achieved, but because of who you showed up for, when showing up cost you something. So here is the truth this story has been circling all along, the one hiding beneath every question, every image, every quiet pause. You do not need to travel across the world to find the greatest source of happiness available to you. You do not need a bigger achievement, a better title, a more impressive life. In many cases, that happiness is sitting in a chair by a window, right now, wondering when you'll next call. Someday, the sound will stop, the chair will be empty, the voice on the phone will no longer ask when you're coming home, and in that silence, the silence every one of us will eventually face, you will not think about the promotions you chased or the achievements you collected. You will think about whether you truly saw them while you still had time. So call them today. Sit with them today. Taste the bitterness for them, if that is what love requires, not because you owe them, but because somewhere beneath all the noise of the life you're building, they have always been the quiet, overlooked answer to the question you've been chasing your whole life. Happiness was never far away. It was simply waiting for you to come home.